Good. Good morning, everybody. My name is Phil Atherton. I'm the Chief Risk Officer for SafeCharge. SafeCharge is a payments technology company. We specialize in processing high volumes for Tier 1 merchants in regulated markets. We operate our own proprietary gateway and acquiring services that were hand-built by our own engineers. And we are UK stock market listed from 2014. In terms of, as Chris alluded to, in terms of what I'm here to talk about today, I suppose crudely, it's this. It's a piece of research that SafeCharge had commissioned in the fourth quarter of last year, where we went out through the agency to talk to over 200 merchants about how they feel about the service that they're getting from their payment service provider. And there are some interesting results. So, we'll move on. Before I move on, can I just have a quick show of hands, please? Who believes they are here representing a gateway and/or acquirer, please? Can you put your hand up? Oh, that's a good number. Thank you. Hopefully, there will be a few takeaways for you here that you will find interesting and that you can action. Can I have another show of hands, please, for who is here representing the schemes, if they're prepared to put their hand up? Thank you. There are some things, I asked that for two reasons. One, because I think there are some things that are in here that I think you will find interesting, but also because I'm going to have a little bit of a dig and I just wanted to know where you were sat. So, let's get into some of the results. As I said, over 200 surveyed. Over 3/4 of those surveyed have experienced at least one outage in the last 12 months. Just have a think about that for a second. And 1 in every 14 merchants surveyed had over 6 outages. Over 6 disruptions to their business in the last 12 months. Frankly, that is a frightening statistic if you put yourselves in the shoes of the merchants who are trying to run a business. Then we started to ask a bit of a drill down on some of those things. And one of the things we asked was, okay, so when did it happen? Only 1 in 5, you might have guessed, is off-peak. The rest were in a mix of peak, so it's happening at the worst time possible for the merchants. They don't like it, they get upset. They talk to you when they get upset. Quickly and loudly. Almost half of the outages were for more than 30 minutes. Interesting statistic there. So it's taken the gateway acquirer a long time to get the service back up and running. Combine that with what you're seeing around when it's happening, and you can start to see the cumulative impact on the businesses that the gateway acquirers are having on their merchant base. I'll let you look at that for a moment. So, then we asked, how long did it take the PSP to sort it out? And I suppose the precursor to that is we're assuming they knew that it was a problem in the first place, which sometimes they didn't. I'll let you just read those for a moment. Over a third took a few hours or more, and 1 in 12 saying it took a day or more to fix. we spoke to some pretty angry merchants. You're starting to see the picture. This is where it starts to get even more interesting. And we're starting to speculate why. If you look at some of the statistics there, 37% every 6 months. Anyone want to have a guess at what happens every 6 months? Well done. Well done. That was my first dig. I think I speak for all of the acquirers in the room when I say to the schemes, please think hard before what you do what you're doing to us, because of some of the impacts that we're seeing here. There's no direct correlation. I may be adding 2 and 2 and making slightly more than 4, but it's a spooky coincidence if it's not. So, what happens when things go wrong? Almost 2/3 of the merchants said that they couldn't access their provider, their PSP, 24/7. There's a third relying on an online portal only in contacting their provider when things go wrong. They are not happy with that as a single interface into you as the acquirer. A lot of what I've talked about so far has been COO related, if I think about the functional responsibilities within the companies that you represent. I'm now starting to appeal to the CFOs within the room, because this is where it starts to translate into real money. Over 1 in 10 thinks that it costs them over 100,000 euros in lost revenues. I'll let you just read that for a moment, because there's some interesting things on there. So, we've already talked about how the merchants feel about it. The key message from them is it affects the way their customers feel about them. Just have a look at some of the things on there. Eroded customer confidence. Complaints from customers, as well as complaints from your customers to you. Lost revenue. And more significantly, I think, probably than any of those, from a merchant perspective, the longer-lasting damage to their reputation. And that's impossible to put a price on, frankly. So, top tips. And these are some of the things that we in SafeCharge already do. Check that your SLAs are actually aligned to your service offering. In the last 3 years, SafeCharge has had 5 nines uptime, 99.999. We've had 4 minutes downtime in the last 3 years. We make sure that it works. Make sure that you've got active solutions. Make sure that you've got 24/7 support that somebody can actually speak to if things go wrong. And also make sure that you've got alternatives. This is an example of something that we at SafeCharge do. We've provided links to QR codes, etc., so to ensure that our merchants have access to different ways of processing a transaction if the end acquirer that we connect to via our gateway has an issue. This is my next message to the schemes. And one maybe just to think about for a few minutes. 1 in 7 of the people surveyed still don't understand how they're being charged. Despite the EU interchange fee regulation and the requirement for unblended, 1 in 7 of the merchants that we surveyed didn't understand properly how they were being charged. And a quarter only had a rough idea. It starts to make you think. So, when you're asked about the quality of MI that you get from your PSP, what did the merchants say? Half of them not able to access transaction level data, despite the fact that most of them want it, and only 1 in 10 can get the total details at the level they want it. When we started to talk to the merchants about this information and how they're accessing it, half of them have got no real-time access. 20%, 1 in 5 of the merchants that we surveyed, are still getting their information on a paper-based report. This is 2017. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. This is my third message to the schemes. Not all of the merchants that we spoke to want Interchange Plus Plus. Some are very happy with a blended pricing solution. And actually, a third would prefer a simple pricing solution that they understand rather than having some convoluted hybrid solution that the acquirer has cobbled together themselves in some cases. Again, some more tips. Give them real-time remote access so that they can access the information they need when they want it, rather than when you want to give it to them. Make sure you can offer, excuse me, make sure that you can offer transaction level reporting if the merchant wants it. And despite the fact that I may have upset a few scheme people today, my plea generally is try and keep the schemes happy. So I've worked for other acquirers and had some interesting times there and interesting dialogue with the schemes, particularly around what we could and couldn't do. When I got to SafeCharge, one of the things that surprised me more than anything was the fact, what I asked them, what do you do about the mandatory scheme changes, and how do you manage that dialogue with the schemes? And they just said, well, we do everything. And I nearly passed out at that point, because my experience in previous acquirers was I'd spent the previous however many years battling with the schemes, telling them what we couldn't do because our architecture didn't allow it, and we were decommissioning systems and replacing them with new systems and still doing that even today, et cetera, et cetera. So getting to SafeCharge, where we end-to-end manage our own systems, gateway, acquiring, and we can just make the changes when we want to, was very refreshing. The MasterCard Series 2 bin ranges. We were ready a long time before the mandated date. I believe, anecdotally, there are some acquirers that aren't ready today. I think, from my perspective, this was very illuminating as a piece of research. It showed to me and to SafeCharge that the requirements of merchants are increasingly demanding. They're looking for much more than a low price. They're looking for good access. They're looking for good management information. And I think that is as valuable as a low price. This is my final dig at the schemes before I close. Until the schemes start to level the playing fields more when it comes to the scheme fee tiers and the way that small acquirers are disadvantaged over large acquirers because of their scale volume, the small acquirers are going to have to compete on these kind of areas because they cannot compete on price. My message to you is if you get it right and you do the things that I've talked about in this research, even if you can't compete on price, you can still win good quality tier 1 business. And that's what SafeCharge is doing.